Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan, joined by the ever-present Pete. Hey, Pete, how are you today?
I am great. Ethan, how are you?
I'm good. It is the weekly stream or skip segment. You know the rules. I know the rules. We've got some new listeners today. Can you take 15 seconds or less and explain the rules in one deep breath?
Ethan and I have prepared lists of TV shows for each other to watch. Every week, we randomly assign each other one of those shows. We each watch at least 2 episodes or 30 minutes if it's a feature-length program. And on that basis, we determine if that show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
That's right. So without further ado, shall we introduce the shows that we assign to each other? Last week, we were both on Netflix. This week, we diverged a little bit. I was on Apple TV Plus. You were on Amazon Prime.
That's right. I thought I was on Netflix, but regional licensing strikes again. And I was not on
Amazon.
Netflix. I was on Amazon.
Do you want to kick it off this week?
Sure. So I had a show called From, F-R-O-M.
Okay.
And it is a horror mystery, something creepy. So there's 2 reasons why it's horror. 1,
Okay.
there's monsters.
Oh.
And 2, most scarily, it's on Amazon Prime. But that's the last you'll hear.
But I digress. But I digress.
Anyway, the premise is super simple. You have an unnamed town in the middle of middle America somewhere. And you have, a sheriff, you have a very small community feel to it. And you start to show off towards the end of the day as the sun is starting to set. And as that happens, the sheriff is walking around ringing a bell, making sure everybody's indoors before the sun sets.
Is this like modern times?
Modern times.
Okay.
And so you're just thinking, okay, weird, fine. Maybe it's like a prudish town and everyone just needs to be home by then. And of course, we find out the reason is because once the sun sets, monsters come out, but they're not monsters like, creepy ghoulies with crazy makeup or anything. They're monsters that are in the shape of people that the townspeople know. So it could be somebody's grandmother, somebody's grandfather, somebody's boyfriend.
Are they people? They're just blobs.
No, they're just regular people. It looks like regular people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But when they open the windows or their doors, they come in and show their true forms, which is obviously a monster, and they kill everyone who's inside the house.
So it's a shapeshifter.
So it's a shapeshifter kind of thing.
Okay.
And so that's how the first half of the episode opens. The second half of the episode is about how there's this family who's in an RV traveling around the country. And they hit a roadblock because there's a tree that's fallen over. And so they take a detour and that detour lands them through this town.
Okay.
And as they leave, they don't take any roundabout roads.
Yeah.
But somehow they keep winding back into that town. Even though they haven't turned left or right, every time they leave the town, they come back to the town.
Okay.
Right? And it seems now they're in a loop and they can't get out of that town. And then, of course, they're now a part of this town's ecosystem. And I guess that's how everybody else in this town has kind of gotten theirs. They've gotten into this vortex of doom by kind of showing up. And you can't escape.
So during the daytime, everything is peachy keen, right?
Yeah, I mean peachy keen in the sense that as peachy keen as it could be for a town, which is basically a nightmarish scenario.
So in the evening, as long as they don't open their doors or windows and just keep everything locked up, then they're okay?
That's right. And so the point is that they're supposed to hammer their windows shut so that they can't physically be open no matter what. And the family that got murdered is because the husband was a drunk and he was out on the town and his
Oh,
daughter and his wife were murdered by these
oh
monsters.
no.
Yeah. Anyway, longtime listeners will know I am not a fan of horror, typically. I'm
Same.
not a fan
Same.
of creepy things like this. There's a few exceptions, like I'm a big fan of the Aliens franchise for some crazy reason,
Yeah.
but this is not my bag.
Okay.
Set design, production values are very nice. This show started, I think, 2 years ago, and it's on its third season and it's running. So it's clearly a success,
Oh, really?
but it's not for me. I think this is like the type of people who like The Walking Dead and that kind of thing, but I'm not one of those people. It's
I mean,
super creepy. It's just not my bag. So for me, it's a skip. If you're into monsters and if you're into horror and creepy vibes, this could be for you, but I'm not, so I'm out.
but what's the long-term hook for the show? Is it kind of like The Walking Dead was initially a show about zombies, but the I guess the zombie angle wore off very quickly, right? The novelty wore off, and it soon became a show about, relationships and scheming and
Yeah,
tribes,
yeah.
humans. Is that the same thing that From is using to keep people hooked?
I imagine that's going to be what it is. Having said
Yeah.
that, full caveat, I was dying to get out of here halfway through the first episode.
Well,
So
that's awful.
I saw 2 episodes, and even The Walking Dead, 2 episodes isn't enough.
So you said this was on, for you, it's on Amazon Prime, but for most people, it's heavily promoted on Netflix, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's an Epix show,
Oh, that's
but
why.
of course, Epix outside of the US is probably
Yeah.
not a thing.
So that is From on either Amazon Prime or Netflix, and Pete is giving it a straight up skip.
Absolutely.
Pete's benevolence has sometimes gotten the better of him, and I know that sometimes you've said, well, this is a strong skip or it's a strong mooch, and you try to give it like the B plus or the C plus or the D plus, but here it seems like you're just flat out failing it
Yeah, it's just not.
categorically.
How about you?
So I would like to tell you, Pete and listeners, that I had better success. I was assigned something called Midnight Family on Apple TV Plus. Longtime listeners know we are both very, very big fans of Apple TV Plus. Second season of Silo just dropped. More often than not, love the stuff that comes from Apple TV Plus. We've had a lot of really good experiences, and I think when we do our annual streamies, we've said that it's the platform that has the best bang for its buck. With that said, I was a little bit enthusiastic about Midnight Family. It was actually based, or I should say inspired from, a film/documentary that was made several years prior. And the documentary followed a family consisting of a father, a son, and then a younger daughter and a younger son. And what's novel about them, they own a private ambulance company. So the father is the driver. The eldest son is kind of let's call him like the muscle, where he would be doing a lot of things to like lift the gurney, hold patients down, and so forth. The daughter is she's kind of like the medical expert. And then the youngest son, who can't be more than like 8 or 9, is just kind of like the tag along. So that's the premise, that apparently this was a documentary drama several years ago. It followed this one family in Mexico City, and it showed a lot of different aspects of their life, right? So, there's the first aspect, they're a family that works together. So, of course, you're going to have family drama. Second aspect is they're in the healthcare industry in Mexico, which has a lot of challenges. You come across all sorts of, different issues. And then the third is that it's a for-profit business, but it's not entirely regulated. So there's a lot of, I'd say, complexity and scheming in terms of getting to the site first, being a first responder so that, the patient is put in your ambulance so that you're paid for it, getting payments from, patients or insurance companies, which doesn't really exist, or hospitals. So it's a complex scheme. And apparently that movie struck a lot of nerves. So now they have made a series about it. So I've compared the two, not watching both, but reading about them, and there are some differences. The father is, the traditional gregarious, big heart, right? Heart as big as his gut kind of guy. Everyone knows him. He's knows all the tricks in the books, all the back alleyways, all the fastest routes to get from here to there. And of course, he's got a bad heart. So he's actually suffering from his own healthcare issues, doesn't want to tell his children because he will potentially be a burden on them and make them feel guilty. We've seen this, routine before. The younger son probably is the least developed, or the older son is probably the least developed character. Again, even though he's not a big guy like his father, he's kind of the muscle where, he's called on to do kind of the traditionally male thought of tasks, right? He's got to do a lot of the heavy lifting. He's got to do the crowd control. He's kind of responsible for that. He understands medicine and, seems to be a good paramedic in his own right, but he's definitely not known for his paramedic skills. He's kind of the muscle. The younger daughter, who let's say is like mid-20s, early 20s, she is kind of the focal point of this. So to the extent that there's a main character, it's her. And she is, as you may expect, kind of the girl who's got it all, right? So she's super, super beautiful, but she's also got a big heart and loves practicing medicine and loves being a paramedic and loves helping people. She's incredibly skilled, and we show that, even though she's not going to class because she's out, doing her family business or she's not studying, she still knows, the biology and human anatomy, better than anyone else in her class. She's just not showing up. Everyone is, going out to party and celebrate and have a social life, and she's, not doing that. She's also having a steamy affair with one of her professors, which adds a new wrinkle to this. But she's definitely the focal point. And again, like I said, she's kind of the perfect package where she's very, very beautiful. She's very, very intelligent. She's very, very, has a good heart, good soul, cares about people. She's definitely, the protagonist in all of this. Then there's the youngest son, who again is, I might be way off in guessing people's ages. I'd guess he's 8 or 9. Cute little pudgy Mexican guy. He's just there to be kind of the foil. Occasionally, will go out and direct traffic or move a cone or something. He's just along for the ride. He should be in school. Doesn't seem to be very often. So I watched my 2 episodes, and I mean, there's a lot of elements that could be interesting. I mean, think of it as like a mobile ER, right? I mean, so you see, the girl who was, beat up by her boyfriend. You see someone who is in a car accident. You see the heart attack victim. Everyone's got, their own, dramas and issues, and locations are always a challenge. And then you throw in, kind of like the B plot, which is as a for-profit ambulance, like they need to get to scenes first, right? So generally people don't really call them. It's kind of like kind of like a police scanner system, it seems. Or they just see that there's a fire or something and they have to get to the scene first and they have to load people up. Then they get to the hospital and either the patients pay or the hospital pays. And the collections, I would say, from the financial side are really a challenge for them. But in the 2 episodes I saw, they haven't really gotten into like, what is their rate? How does it work? Who's responsible? It's just kind of this plot line where, we got to get paid, or why are we doing this? We have to be first, or, we can't do this. There's definitely kind of like an element where they are thinking strategically in terms of how can they actually, get compensated for their services.
Right.
Overall, there's some shows that make professions look more glamorous or maybe attract people to those professions. Maybe ER did that for, the medical profession. Maybe Suits did that. There's shows that, encourage people to go into one career or another. Certainly, I don't think anybody watches this and says, oh man, like paramedic, or oh man, like private ambulance. I don't think that's at all what it's trying to do, although it doesn't really seem to be making a statement as to whether it's good or bad. It's more about the family and the relationship dramas around everybody.
Right.
So all of that said, I felt like it's really a letdown. Like the premise possibly I could get into. I mean, ER was even Scrubs, even The Resident, The Good Doctor. I mean, House. I mean, there's so many medical dramas that, to be honest, it doesn't really take a lot to get me hooked on some of those. This one was a little bit, nah, there was just so much going on and kind of so much drama in everybody's lives that I just felt like it was a little bit overwhelming. And there wasn't really any character that I really, really loved. And there wasn't really anything that I was rooting for. It was very meh, to be honest. So I gave it a skip. And I mean, I will take a little bit of your benevolent touch and say, there's actually nothing wrong with the show. I mean, it's perfectly fine, kind of entertaining. Didn't really hate anything about it. It just, with all the other competing media out there, especially on Apple TV Plus, and we can compare Silo second season in a moment, there was just nothing in this that kept me from like wanting to continue to watch.
Yeah.
Everyone's just, there was no quirkiness in it. There was no humor whatsoever. There was nothing also that really made me cry. So compare that to The Resident, which I've watched a few episodes of, which I feel has all of those characteristics, right? There's kind of some quirkiness, there's some very, very sad scenes, very emotional scenes. There's some light humor. None of that came across in the show. I think it's probably very faithful to the original documentary drama, but in terms of being a compelling piece of entertainment to sit down and watch or focus on, it's not there. And dare I say, I'd be a little bit surprised if anyone who's not, I mean, this is a Mexican show based on a Mexican family in Mexico City. I'd be surprised if anyone who's not really Mexican or deeply Latin American would fall in love with this, for any reason based on plot or characters. There may be some nostalgia, there may be some, interesting, seeing a healthcare system from the Mexican perspective, but in terms of entertainment value, nada, my friend, nada.
Oh, wah, wah.
That is a skip from me as well. Do you want to say something briefly on Silo before we turn our attention to our assignments for next week?
Yeah. Very briefly, Silo is awesome. Everyone stop what you're doing after this episode and watch it.
I echo that, but let me go a little bit deeper. Silo is very, very, I think, brilliant for how it's put together elements that on paper aren't really that compelling. It is very dark. I mean, from a lighting perspective, right? I mean, aesthetically, it's very dark. The probably relatively inexpensive from a production value because it basically takes place in a very dirty, dingy bunker,
Yeah.
right? Little bit outside in a barren oasis. Costumes are something that you would see from the Matrix, when on the Ebenezer, right? I mean, it's a bunch of old sweaters that have a lot of holes or like jumpsuits that are really dingy, right? I mean, no modern technology. And it's, to be honest, it's a little bit slow. But I think that the pace is what is so fulfilling about it, because like in this episode 1 of season 2, for the vast majority of the episode, we kind of knew what was coming, but no, that's not it. No, that's not it. And then kind of in the final minute, we got what we wanted, but it wasn't what we expected, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think the pace of this show and how they can take something that is a little bit inevitable but really challenge your expectations about what it is that you think you're going to see, I think is really part of the brilliance of this. I'm not sure where this goes, for the rest of season 2. I mean, I guess big picture, I kind of know, but like in the coming episodes, I mean, I'm really curious to see, where this goes and, what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I know we talked about how last season they opened up with a 2-parter or 2 episodes to start, and this time they only did 1.
Yeah.
I think it's genius for them because A, it ended on a fantastic cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah.
And 2, they know they've got us. They don't need to give us a second.
Selfishly, it sucked. But from a business perspective, absolutely the right choice. The way that first episode ended, I mean, if they would have been like, oh, surprise, Apple TV Plus subscription just doubled.
Yeah.
Pay now and you can see episode 2. I'd be like, where do I enter my credit card details?
Exactly.
It was pretty fantastic. I'm excited about Silo season 2. Fantastic episode. But I mean, again, compare that to Midnight Family. Great title. Kind of decent premise. Just didn't get me engaged. And I'll say it. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times, Pete. And I know that's a cliche, but it's not fair to judge a show after 2 episodes. It's really not. The history of good shows that have gotten amazing after 2 episodes is long and deep. But by the same token, in this culture, in this society, people have so many things competing for their attention.
Yeah.
Knowing that those are the rules of the game, I'm sorry it's not fair. I'm sorry a lot of people probably have great products and it takes 6 or 7 or even a season to like really work out the kinks. But it's just not the old days where you could just tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m. and watch an episode of Lost. And they knew that they were going to get it sorted one way or another after a few episodes. Here, you don't have the luxury streaming. Sometimes you've got 30, half an episode, but we give them 2. And honestly, if you can't hook us within those 2, that is something that you've done wrong, because knowing that people are so fickle, you have to have a good hook, I think, up front. Yeah. Silo did that. Midnight Family did not.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. All right. Shall we talk about what's going on for next week?
Yeah. What do we have next week? We are both on Amazon Prime. Is that right?
That's right. Shudder. You are watching a show called Patriot.
Yep.
And I'm watching a show called Norton Hall.
Interesting. Neither one of us knows anything about that. I mean, from Patriot, I could gather something, but I don't really know.
Yeah. And Norton Hall, I mean, it sounds like nothing. I mean, I have no idea what that is. So,
yep. We want to read off our YouTube creds before we sign out and off for the day.
Absolutely. Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. But as always, the best thing you can do, like this video, leave a comment below, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell.
Pete, I could not have said it better myself. Listeners, thank you for tuning in and hearing us discuss From on Amazon Prime and or Netflix, and Midnight Family on Apple TV Plus. Tune in 1 week from today to hear how we liked Patriot and something called Norton Hall. Sounds like a law firm on Amazon Prime.
Perfect. Until then, thanks everyone. Thanks, Ethan.
Thanks everyone. See you the next time on the Films and Stuff Podcast. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.